We weren't sure if this would be a big crowd or a small crowd, hopefully not a mean crowd. But we appreciate your interest and your participation as we begin a very, very important process and dialogue and discussion moving forward regarding the West High campus. My name is Jared Wright. I'm the principal of West. I'm also an alumni of West. I graduated in 1998. I like to joke it's been downhill ever since. Yes, thank you. It's good. That was the peak of West High School was 98, but no. I know my alumni here. There we go. I also am a parent. I've had 3 students of our own attend West. 2 have graduated. 1 is a sophomore and 2 coming up. I graduated in 98. I came back in 2004 to be a teacher here. I taught television broadcasting. I was the TV West teacher and taught Spanish. Tried to teach Spanish, I should say, in IB Film Studies. And then I've come back as the principal in March of 2020 is when they moved me here. I love the West community. I love West High. Really, it's been such a major part of my life in different ways. So I'm really fortunate to be part of a community that I know people feel passionately about this school and this community and this building. Before we begin, just want to introduce some individuals from the district, and then I'll have Paul have you introduce VCBO, if that'd be okay. So we have Paul Schulte, Executive Director of Facilities, right here. Yes. He's kept our buildings cool, which has been nice during a heat wave. We've been able to stay in session, so we appreciate that. That's not an easy thing. Alan Kersley, our Business Administrator and Acting Superintendent. Christina Kendall, Executive Director of Legal Services and Policies, right? Lisan Taylor, Dr. Lisan Taylor is Executive Director of School Leadership and Support. And we've got Yandri Chatwin, she's Executive Director of Community Relations and All Things Communication. Jason Olson as well. Jason, don't want to miss Jason. Number of other people. We really appreciate the effort that they have here. If I could extend an invitation, I know just in discussions, I know from a lot of community conversations, community posts and everything, and even quite a few emails and phone calls, there's a lot of interest and passion and concern about what is being proposed and discussed. What I would ask is that you would have an open mind and a listening ear to what's being presented. I love this school like an old friend, this building. Coming in as the principal a few years ago, my perspective changed as far as looking at the functionality of a high school as it relates to serving the needs of our 21st century students, but also looking at some of the deficiencies of the building through still an admiring eye, but also seeing and appreciating the effort that has been happened over the past several decades to maintain this campus and to make it as modern, as functional as possible, and understanding kind of where we are in that history and that timeline. So if you would please be open tonight. I would say this other thing. I am usually skeptical, usually of bosses in a lot of ways. I'll just say it. And it's just kind of my perspective on things. And also not knowing about who would have their hands on a project like this. My experience so far in the dialogue about what the potential is and the conversations that need to be happening have given me a lot of reason to believe in the good faith of the individuals involved in this. That's from district leadership down as we talk about what the potential is and what the possibilities are, as well as with our new friends from VCBO. I've been watching and listening carefully in our meetings and stuff and have really appreciated their openness and their desire to absorb West High so that they can learn as much as they can as they have such a critical role in this. So we'll turn the time over to Paul Schulte and we'll go to that point.
Good evening. Thank you very much, Jared, for that introduction. I want you to know I'm just ecstatic to be here tonight and to be involved in this process. One thing I have learned about West High, no matter where I travel in the country, I'm originally from Connecticut, and I go back there regularly. I promise you, I don't know if I've been anywhere in the country where I don't run into someone that went to West High. I mean, it's everywhere you go, and they're very proud. I also want you to know that my oldest daughter is a graduate of West High, so I have a child that is an alumni of West High. So it's pervasive, it's everywhere, and so it's just a wonderful legacy. We've had lots of fun times with the VCBO folks already. It was a rigorous and a challenging process to be selected. They should feel honored because we had 4 exceptional firms put in for this project, and so we are in great hands. I want to just outline 2 things, or actually 3 things. One, I want to just follow up on what Jared said. We don't have a plan right now. We have a completely blank piece of paper, and we're just starting from scratch. And so you can feel confident that there's no agenda, nobody has a plan yet, and we'll talk at length about that tonight. The purpose of tonight's meeting is just to kind of explain to you what the process is going to be, how it's going to be laid out. But I want to tell you there's 2 guiding principles that we have committed to honor throughout this process. The first thing, and I want to really call out my boss, Alan Kersley, who's the business administrator. We visited a lot of schools with every architectural firm. So we've seen a lot of buildings. And one thing we came back with is the students in Salt Lake City deserve the most professional, modern, the best instructional space possible. They deserve the best. And that's what we're committed to, is making sure that our students have the best possible educational experience. We're not going to cut any corners. Salt Lake kids deserve a great school, number 1. Number 2, we're very aware, and we're committed 100% within that building, however it plays out, we're going to honor the rich and respect the rich heritage that is the West High campus. We understand there's a great heritage and history here, and it needs to be embedded in the new campus. We don't know how that's going to look either. That's part of the process, but those are 2 guiding principles. Make sure our students get the best possible school, and make sure we honor the history of West High School. We are excited. Again, we went through the process of selecting VCBO, and they have not disappointed yet. Sometimes I've got to kind of hold them down. They're so excited. I'll let them introduce their team to you, and they're going to kind of just walk you through. The biggest process tonight is to just tell you how it's going to roll out. We will take a few questions. I believe cards have been handed out, and you're welcome to write questions, and we'll take a couple. We don't know what the time is, but we will answer all questions on the website too. But tonight is mostly just telling you what the process is going to look like. So with that, I'll turn over the majority of the meeting to our great colleagues from VCBO. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. We're excited to be here tonight. We've prepared some different slides to kind of open up the dialogue. You hopefully, if you had a comment, there's comment cards that you can fill out. We're going to bring them up. Whatever time we have remaining, we'll answer some of those questions. And then any that don't get answered, we are going to provide an answer and put it on the website. So don't feel like you're not being heard if it doesn't get brought up in this meeting. So please put in your comments. As an introduction, we are VCBO Architecture. I'm Alex Booth.
I'm Jeannie Jackson.
I'm Whitney Ward.
And I'm Brian Peterson.
All right, so Whitney is going to start out the conversation, and we'll kind of go through, and then we'll do the comments at the end.
So we wanted to introduce you first to the process that we're going to go through, as well as provide a little bit of a description of what a feasibility study is. So this is a quick timeline of what we're expecting. So over the coming months, you'll see we're kicking off in September. We're anticipating finishing up our study in February. As Paul mentioned, we really are starting with a blank slate. So this evening is our first public input. It's our first opportunity to share with you the process and to start to solicit feedback. And just know that we're going to be gathering a ton of information between now and February. And as we go through that process, we're really beginning, as Paul mentioned, with understanding what is the student experience, not only the experience that students have had in their generations and time at West High School, but also what is the experience that we hope for future generations. And we're really excited to look towards that future and make sure that whatever improvements occur are really creating that optimal learning space, that are creating those strong relationships, and help students to be successful wherever they may go past West High. And so our first section is really focused on the student and the academic experience, and we're doing a combination of big community meetings like this, as well as what we call small stakeholder engagement or workshops, where we get together with specialists and we get specific input. So you'll see our next step is a red dot where we're having an academic-focused workshop with faculty and students and administrators to really understand what the academic needs are for West High School. And once we really understand the academic and experience that we're trying to strive for, we'll then dive into what we call an architectural program, and this is where we define the individual space needs for West High. And so we'll understand each room and the support spaces that are required to make sure those academic programs can be successful into the future. After that phase, we then go into our concept development. And so we really don't have any idea of what this wants to be until we get to that concept development phase and start to put the puzzle pieces of the spaces and the rooms together. And then it starts to create a idea, maybe a massing. We start to look at how it fits onto the site. And you'll see here, that's not going to be until sort of the November, December timeline. And then we'll work through, refine those concepts, gather feedback and input throughout the process, working towards a recommendation in February for the board as an outcome of this process. And so within the feasibility study, when it's complete, it will provide all of these items for the district. It will have the student capacity, make sure we have large enough spaces and sufficient spaces to meet the future envisioned student capacity. Again, that list of rooms and where they need to be located in proximity to one another. We'll look at the number and types of classrooms. We'll dive into the specialty space needs, auditoriums, athletic facilities, career and technical education spaces. And of course, we'll also develop those ideas for where and how it might evolve as a structure, have a cost estimate, of course, attached to that. And really what it is it's a starting point for the more formal design process. So we're really testing the feasibility of the project through this initial process. And that's really what we're doing between now and February. And so one of the things that we recognize is that West High School is not your typical high school. West High School is celebrating its 100-year anniversary of the original building this year. And there are generations of students and alumni who have had West High as an important piece of their personal lives and experiences. And there is so much that folks contribute to their time and experience at West High. We also know that it's a strong part of the Salt Lake City community. And so we want to make sure that we're engaging not only with the current students, but also with the future students. What are the junior high school students or the elementary school students going to want to sort of strive for within West High? We're going to want to engage with the alumni networks and understand what's been really valuable about your experience at West High. We want to connect with the community partners, post-secondary partners, business partners, all of these groups that are coming in and helping to support the education and the experience of West High School students every day. And we also know that we're going to be working with all of the communities that are in and around West High. And so now I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Alex, and he's going to talk a little bit about the history.
That's one of the great things that just got posted on YouTube is an old video kind of chronologically showing how this building came to be. And hopefully you have some time to go check it out. But just to give an overview of that, this West High campus has been an educational part of the city since the pioneers came. The Deseret University was here. Salt Lake City High School got onto the site in that old building, and from the 1890s up until 1919, they were in this small building teaching. The students understood that it did not meet their needs for education, and they organized a public protest and got a bond to pass for the new West High School. And so the new West High School was built through 1920, 21, and opened in 22. And so here's some old drawings. It's great to find all of this kind of historic information, photos, and see how the campus has evolved over time. Salt Lake City School District has done a ton of stuff over the years to maintain the campus and to keep it meeting those students' needs. I mean, no other school in the valley has lasted 100 years. And so you can see here, the campus has morphed and changed over time with additions, tearing stuff down. It's in a prominent urban area within the city. It has unique contexts that are unlike other schools throughout the valley. And so being able to have this campus that goes on the east and west of 300 West creates both challenges and opportunities for the district and the school. Just to kind of give you a visual of how this campus has adapted over time, we wanted to do this view. So you can see that original 1921 building and then all of these different additions that have been put onto it. And so as Jared kind of alluded to coming in as a principal, when you're trying to manage a structure like this where classes are sprawled out in all different areas and you have different mechanical systems or other pieces tying all these together, it creates unique challenges. What that does is it creates a lot of disparity in different areas of the building. And so this is a great view just seeing how these pieces of the buildings are coming together, what type of spaces are created with that, and what the student experience starts to be because of that. Instead of having views out, you're viewing another building that was an addition. There's different kind of architectural styles throughout the exterior. And then the interior, you have these different types of spaces and experiences. And for those young students coming to the school, just trying to find your way around the school, I think there's so many different staircases, so many different levels, different hallways. And so you go from kind of that main hallway to some of these smaller hallways, and you just think like, you do not want to be in that hallway when class lets out. That's just two people coming down. Imagine trying to be in those lockers and having students trying to get by. Every different part of the building kind of has its own finishes, its own type of maintenance that's needed, everything coming together. The school district, like I said, has done great to adapt and make this work over time. There's these historical elements like the stairs that they've had to try to bring up to modern building codes through different ways while keeping that kind of design and spirit of what the school was. And so as we come into a school like this, what we want to do is say, what are all the elements that make this school unique? What is the spirit of West High School? What is the tradition of West High School? What are those elements, like Paul was saying, that we want to honor and continue forward no matter where this study takes us? And so as we go through this school and as we meet with all of you and get your ideas and input, we can start to understand, what are the things that people hold dear and that people want to move forward with. And so as we look at it, we find all sorts of fun things, like this ASW office that we were looking at yesterday, that decades and decades of students have had that sign, this flag from, commemorating the start of the high school. These different architectural elements that are all throughout the facade and kind of the spirit and the feeling that brings. How can we continue that heritage and continue that forward?
The last thing we want to do is turn our back on that. And our job is to capture the essence of that and then build it into whatever it is we come up with for your students and your alumni and all of the students that are coming in the future. One of our jobs is to expose all of the deficiencies in the current campus. And there's a number of things that should be and could be better, and our job is to make all of these things better. There's a number of things that the school district has done a really good job at adapting to with their existing conditions, and you saw all those different elements that have been added over the last century. But you still have all of these ideas that are over 100 years old that your students are learning in, like these outdated learning environments that we're seeing. What you're seeing as we toured around the school is that many of the teachers, all of the teachers, and all of the students are trying their best to learn in these environments that have been adapted over the decades. You have large classrooms that have been broken into smaller classrooms, and even smaller classrooms that have been tried to use, and you've got 40 students that are being crammed into a place that really is good for 20. The disparity of these learning environments is pretty dramatic, but you guys do a great job at educating your students within them. You've got a lot of windows on that east facade, but they're almost all closed off. Just little things like that. This is a good example of this really cool element from the outside of the building that looks really cool, but on the inside, this is the way that it is viewed from the inside of the building. But as you can see, look at all these students, and kids are getting bigger. You notice that? Kids are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you've got probably 30 students that are crammed into this student. And you can see it. We watched this teacher for like 5 minutes. This guy's killing it. But given the proper learning environment, it's going to be even more effective. This is your choral suite and your theater classroom. The problem with this is that the accessibility of this classroom. So you get a student that's in a wheelchair, and then there's all kinds of issues that come up with that. The acoustics of these rooms. This is your band room. Normally when we design a band room, an instrument room, we have a ceiling that is upwards of 30 feet tall because you need a space that can fill the sound that's coming out of an orchestra or a band. And again, accessibility. If you have a player that needs to be down those 2 steps that it also happens to be semi or non-ambulant, they're not going to make it. And then you've got issues of storage and issues of where do you keep all your instruments and everything like that. One of the things that we've noticed about your building is that it is very expensive to run. And you guys have done a great job as a school district in maintaining it and keeping it. We're cool right now on one of the hottest days of the year, right? But it costs a lot of money to keep doing that. And you're seeing all of these all antiquated heating and cooling systems, and so it's been supplemented by upwards of 100 of these individual units that we have in classrooms that are using tons of electricity that the school district and therefore the taxpayer is paying for. One of the things that we design around constantly is the idea of technology. When this building was originally conceived, there was probably a conversation of whether we're going to have electric lights in the building. Now we're talking about like all kinds of things that are way beyond anybody's imagination when this building was first built. And so your school district has done a good job at trying to keep going with technology and keep up with other schools, but your building is falling behind. There's a number of things that we design into schools that are very important, and they're very important to the day-to-day safety of your children and the people that come to this school. And they're subtle things that we do in our designs that make the school safer without it feeling like a prison or without it feeling like a place that bad things could happen in. Just some simple ideas about accessibility. This is your front entry to your building, and you've put in this wheelchair lift that fills the purpose, but it kind of wrecks the space. These are entries into bathrooms where we all know where most of the trouble happens in a high school. And so just creating a space that is safe and secure. What did we say? We had 9 official entries into your building. How many? 13 official entries into your building. None of them are secure. And so building a high school is very difficult to keep it locked and safe. But one of our jobs as your architect is to design a building that feels open and inviting, but also gives us an environment that we can close it down quick. Unfortunately, right now, we don't have that at West. It's going to be a different way of securing the building. So that was one of our goals, but also exposing that deficiency.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the changes that are going on in teaching and learning and have been going on for a little while. This is our kind of fun graphic. We have 1910, that was your car. 2017, that was your car. What's the future? And, the same with the way we communicate with people. Classrooms, you can see there's not a lot of difference between 1910 and 2017 in some instances. This is actually, this is from West, isn't it, that classroom? Similar, okay. So we know a lot of the things. We have made quite a study of it at our firm about how teachers are wanting to teach and how students are learning more successfully. So first of all, we say, what skills do students need to succeed? So when this school was built, most of the kids went and worked in a factory and did manufacturing. Nowadays, they don't. So this school was designed to do that function. So now, people are much more collaborative, and students learn better that way too, and they learn better with some of the technology that they're always using all the time. But then they go to work in places like this is Overstock. This is what they're, some of them will work in an environment that looks like that. And so how do we make, so these 4 skills at the bottom, what skills do students need to succeed? Collaboration, creativity, communication, and flexibility. Those are the top 4 attributes of future workers that 1,700 CEOs who were polled gave as a list of what they want in a future employee. So they also need a lot of different spaces. They need conference rooms for small group learning or tutoring each other. They need breakout spaces so that they can do projects together. Peer tutoring is a big thing, and a lot of learning in different ways than we all learned. I assume most of the people in this room learned like I did in that row of desks and chairs. So what we want to do is we want to make the West High experience amazing. We want all the things that Brian was talking about, the comfort, we want security, we want it to be very accessible, which this building really is not, even though it's been modified as best they can. And we want your kids to be engaged and want to come to school. It shouldn't just be, high school, So one of the other things that we wanted to talk about with you is sustainability. So your board passed I don't know what you call it. Well, yeah, a resolution. Thank you, yes. So they passed a resolution to do a sustainable action plan. And actually, Alex and I were able to be involved in part of that, the team, a subcommittee on that team, yeah. And this is one of the first things that happened after that. It's a bus canopy project, and it's got solar, generates solar and energy, and you have a lot of buses now that are electric. And so we're generating energy to power your buses from the sun. So how good is that? So the idea is that, as Brian said, it's very expensive to run a building like this, and a sustainable building will save immense amounts of money for the district, besides being good for the environment.
Okay, my mic's on. So not only do we want at the end of the day to have an environmentally sustainable, a durable, an incredibly effective school for the kids, but we want a school that will continue to serve the next 100 years of students within Salt Lake City School District. And so again, we're really excited about this process. We're just starting today. So as Alex mentioned there are comment cards on the table in the center of the room. We would love for you guys to use those either for asking questions or just giving us thoughts or ideas, things that are important to you, any feedback you have. We also have a website that's been started for this project and for this process, and there will be a survey on that website that we would love to have very broad community engagement in. That initial survey is going to ask you a lot of questions about your experience and the experience that you hope others have in this school to help set the stage so that we can be successful as we work through all of these other steps and moving forward, working towards February. So with that, I think we're going to have Paul come back up and start our Q&A period.
As we collect the cards, I just wanted to bring up maybe 2 clarifications that I think we've done a great job, and maybe we danced around a bit, so I'll be a little real, I'll be me, I'll be direct. It's a little unique, and I think it's really important that everybody that leaves this meeting kind of understands this process. So this is a feasibility. It's a little bit different than some other districts where normally if we'd had the architect, we'd be going in depth and we would be saying, okay, in 12 months, we're gonna have actual plans. We're not in that position yet. We have to pass a bond to make that happen. So what will happen, just let's say everything works out the way we hope. Let's be optimistic. We're developing this feasibility plan. We're going to have some conceptual ideas of what type of space that we've outlined and things like that. We'll have a few suggestions of, hey, this is how we think we can lay the building out and we'll come up with a dollar figure, an estimate, and then we'll prepare for the bond. I'll be very specific about what I don't go into on the bond, but the bond will be potentially next year. What I want to say, though, let's say everything works out and the bond passes. Come next November, we will, because of this relationship, we can pivot instantaneously, and then we will start developing actual construction plans. So this is really putting us in a position to be prepared for that. I was talking to Mr. Asay beforehand, and we'll have actually more in-depth committees, and what the nice thing about that is we could actually have those ready and prepared before, so if it passes and stuff, we can really be ready to go. But this is feasibility. It's just saying, what are some of the things that we can do? What are some of the possibilities in trying to figure out how much it would cost so we can be responsible? So it's a little bit different than maybe some districts, and it's important to understand how far we'll go here, but we'll be ready to pivot instantaneously. Okay, let's see what we have here, Yandre. Great, this card set a comment card, thanks. All aspects for learning are being assessed and evaluated, correct. Here's the concern, and I'm glad this is here because I'd like to have this right out there for everyone. Will the historical front of the school be kept? What ideas are being looked at across Third West? Great. So let me go back and say we have a blank piece of paper, and our first commitment is the learning facility for the children. How do we come up with the best possible space for children to learn? Unfortunately, the front of the building is not the priority for that. The children learning is. And so when we talk about embracing and honoring the rich heritage of the West High campus, and also I think Brian had some slides up there about some of the different architecture and things that are on the front and throughout the building. Certainly, the team is going to take that into consideration, but a wholesale commitment to saving the front is not our top priority. Kids learning, but our second priority is definitely honoring the heritage of West High and making sure that will be prevalent throughout the building. Okay? Okay, is this proposed school being built based on current student population size, or will it be based on a projected student size? We have been told our population size will decline. Great question. We have a great team member, Sam Quantz, and he gives us projections all the time. And so we are building this building. In the RFP, we said up to 3,000 students. One of the peculiarities about Salt Lake School Districts is even though we had declined enrollment at the elementary level, our high schools kind of counterintuitive to that. They kind of keep maintaining their enrollment. And I think part of that is because when children get older And West High speaks to this. We get students from outside of our attendance area. It's easier for older students to get here. The IB program pulls in a lot of students. But the same thing is happening at all of our high schools across. Highland High is almost 500 students more than when I left 9 years ago. So that we put down 3,000, but the declining does not seem to be demonstrating itself at the secondary level. So we are looking at the enrollment trends, but based on what we're seeing and based on the information we get, that's what we've put out there. I don't know, Jared?
2682.
Still right at that 2,700.
And unlike Paul,
Thank you.
the enrollment's declined since I've been here as the principal. I don't know if that's an indication to me, but no, we started at 2980, I think, is
If
when I
it
came
goes
here.
down much more, we'll just kick Jared out
That's
and
right.
I'll come back.
And I think with enrollment, it's important to note, going back and on the data, Sam, that shared, I went all the way back to the glorious year of 1998, and we were at 2480, and it's been like 2480, 25, 26, 25. It's been very, very stable, and I think that's what Paul alluded to. It's regardless of the growth and even some of the negative growth that's been taking place at different places, West has maintained the same neighborhood of enrollment pretty stably. So we anticipate that would continue.
And the short answer is we will continue during this process to look at the trends. So as Sam continues to get potential enrollment, we'll still be in a position to pivot and adjust accordingly between now and next fall, next November. Okay. How much of the land will be used, probably added or taken away when projects start? Will the academics and athletic buildings rival other top high schools? Yes, let me go to number 2. Yes, that's our number 1 commitment, is making sure we're not going to cut corners, Every student that attends school in Salt Lake City deserves to have as quality a school and facility as any student in the state of Utah. And that's our number one priority. The other part about it, how much of the land will be used to add or take away, that's the great unknown. That's part of what we're doing, right? Is we're looking at how things can lay out, how things might, what's the best way to utilize our land to make this happen. So the honest, I want to emphasize it because, sometimes the rumor mills are really intense. We have no concept right now. It is 100% a blank paper, and we're starting from ground zero, and everybody's input and feedback will help us determine what are some of the options. So we don't know how things will lay out on the campus. Brian?
I just to add to that, the question was really good in that how are we going to use the site? Because it's a very unique site, isn't it? We've got a highway running through the middle of our campus. And so our study is to look at every square inch and how we can use that moving forward. So our job is to assess your current situation, and what we've seen, a few things is what we've seen. We came to your football game last Friday, and we just absorbed this awesome energy. We walked through every room of the school yesterday, even up in the clock tower, which is a little scary, and just absorbed this awesome energy. But what we observed was that you guys as a school and as a school district are working and adapting to the site rather than making the site and the school and the building work for you. And our job is to give you something that matches your awesome traditions and your awesome energy as a school, and it will make you both rise up. With regards to the athletic facilities and all the other facilities in the school, they will be top-notch, best in the state. People will come from all over the country to look at our school.
Can I just jump in really quick?
Please.
We're the three loudmouths, right? That
I
taking
feel
over.
like I'm on a
So-
vaudeville show here. This is great.
As I had a project about 4 years ago where I was in a lot of high schools in Alpine School District, and that was the first time when I was looking at either newly built facilities or newly remodeled, completely new campuses. And then since this has been talked about as an idea, just seeing some different buildings and doing some little self-tours and stuff, you can see that even though there's been a great effort to maintain and modernize the building, it's exceeded what this campus has currently built and structured can do. Our students deserve the very best, and definitely no less than students living up in Davis County or somewhere else in the city, or in the valley, in the state for that matter, that the facilities and access they have, they deserve the very best. And that's something I keep hearing actually from all across the border. So that's our goal.
Thank you, Ryan, for writing this question, because sometimes, words matter so much. It says, when do the students attending West get their say in their school? Community is important, but also our kids. Thank you for asking the question, because when I say community, in my mind, the children, the students are the top priority. They will be involved in this. They'll have questionnaires for them, and we will be listening to them. The students that are here, because they have such a unique perspective and can provide such insight. But we also want to drill down. We want to look to the kids that are in the middle schools and their parents. Whitney, you have a thought? Thank you.
I do. So when we looked at that sort of multiple phase process, students are going to be involved because they're students. They get to be involved in both the community outreach and the stakeholder meetings. We get to hear their voice and want to hear their voice all the way through. And so the first thing that we're doing, again, is this big, broad survey, but we're also going to be working with the West High students to put together a specific student-oriented survey for them to really provide that feedback. As we develop concepts, we're going to be engaging with the students all the way through because, again, this is for the students. And as Paul mentioned, it's for the students for generations to come. And so we're really excited to look forward and to hear from junior high school students, from people who have elementary school students to say, what is the future that you envision? And so that's very important to us throughout the whole process.
Our students here, by the way, through our student government, are already arranging their own tours of newer buildings. They're working directly with their counterparts, their student body officers in other buildings. They just want to go and talk and listen, in addition to meeting with VCBO and some other things. So they have a great, if you're familiar with the student body right now, they're the real rich source of information and input about things, everything from the spaces, from learning spaces and everything else. So they're anxious to contribute.
Thank you. This is a great question. I love these type of thought-provoking ones. It says, regarding the financial cost, at which point before the bond, thank you, will we see the cost to maintain versus the cost to replace? I will tell you that I have a bias based on my experience with remodeling and a lot of the work that I do. My job is I'm over every physical facility in the building in this district. I'm very confident that the cost to replace will be significantly less than to maintain. But I really love this question because I think it's really important for us to get that information and provide it to the community. So I am committed to make sure I sharpen my pencil and get that information, and it's included. So that's 100% commitment from the district. We can do that.
And can I just add one thing to that?
Sure.
As we look at the cost, we also want to look at what we call sort of a life cycle cost. And that is not only the cost to maintain, but the cost to replace when things start failing. And so we're going to be looking holistically at the life cycle cost of the building and tying into that the sort of outcomes that come from existing facility versus potentially a new facility, because I think that's really important to look at it really holistically versus a point in time for costs.
Yeah, it's not just the construction, but we'll look at lifetime costs for sure. But I'm glad that question was asked because it's really important for us to include that in the information. So thank you for that question. Great one, great question. Will you continue these meetings going forward? Is West's main building part of the historical site? So I'll answer this in two stages. We will have meetings like this. We're anticipating 3 before the board in February. So we anticipate, this is not chisel and stone, but we have tonight, sometime in November, and then sometime in January. Now, understand there's going to be a ton of outreach and lots of meetings, including with lots of stakeholders between that, but just a general meeting, yes, we anticipate 2 more before we go to the board in February. The West Building, great question. The West Building is not a registered historical site, just for clarification. I want to keep emphasizing we are going to do everything. We are 100% all in to honor this heritage and make sure we know that this is West Hyde when we're done. But as a process, the building itself is not a registered historical site. guys, great questions. I love this. I've heard rumors that the district is considering moving West High to a new campus. Is that true, or will the campus definitely stay here? Are you considering keeping newer parts of the building? Great. So first of all, 100%, the West High campus will be here. This is where the West High campus is going to be. There is absolutely no consideration of moving out to the airport or whatever TikTok you saw. We're staying here. Is this just not the coolest? You come into Salt Lake and here's West High, the gateway to the city, and it wouldn't be Salt Lake City and it wouldn't be West High unless it was on this campus. So we're not going anywhere. We're going to make it work here. Are you considering newer parts of the building? Probably not, but in the spirit of feasibility, if all of our meetings and all of our scratches, we started saying, you know what, that science wing could just work great if we did this. Again, I'm sounding like a broken record, but we have a white slate. And if something says, hey, this would be cost effective and it would really work well, we'll consider anything that will get us the best school for our kids. So everything's on the table.
Hey, Paul, one thing
Sure.
to add to that. One of the great things that we talk about with looking at different scenarios on the site is investigating stuff like that. What if we kept this portion of the building? And so we're going to investigate a lot of different ways to situate a building on the campus. And then there's a whole bunch of ways to measure how successful that is. There's what's the impact on the current students, what's the financial implication, what are the long-term energy costs based on doing something like that. And so there's a lot of factors that will go into what those final recommendations are.
As we said before, we're going to investigate and see how we can use every square inch of this site, both sides of Third West, even to the point of looking at even your stadium as where it's at and where it's located. All of those things will be considered because we want to make sure we get the best end process possible. And speaking to Alex's point about this will be, if the bond passes, which we hope so, right? This will be a long process of construction. And so our job is to consider the educational outcomes of the students that are here while we're building all around them, right? And so we want to make sure that we create a healthy boundary between big construction, and your awesome school staying awesome. And we've done a number of projects where we've come into big high schools like this and built all around or adjacent to, and that's one of our number one concerns is during that 3 to 5 year period, which we'd be building, we really want to consider the students in the building.
Thank you. This, again, a very timely question. We probably would have gotten around to it, but this is making sure we don't forget. If I think of something else after I leave this meeting, which you probably will, how can I share my feedback? If you go to the district website, there's a link to both of this feasibility. There's locations for the surveys, and I believe we'll have location to provide comments on those links as well. Am I correct, Yandre? Okay, so there's a survey that's linked right to that, and so on that survey you can provide any comments. So if you get a thought, and you can always send me an email. My name is Paul Schulte. I'm over Auxiliary Services. You can let Jared know. I bet you could call VCBO. So any of us will be open to it. Whitney?
I was just going to say, so if you go to the website that's on the bottom of the comment card, that's where the survey will be. I also noticed, Jared, I think the West High School website has a link over to that as well. So if you get confused, just go to the West High website, and it's right up front.
This is more of a question for my boss, Alan Kearsley. Can you explain what a bond is and what that process would look like?
Come on up.
Come on up, Alan. I know you didn't want to be up here, but I've done well.
So a bond is a really big loan. Bonds for school districts and government entities have to be voter approved. So a potential plan is go to the voters in November of 2023 to ask approval for that bond. And part of this process is to get what the dollar amount of that bond would be. So we can, present, we need X number of dollars. And then it's a loan that the district gets to build the building that then gets paid over the life of the loan, like a car loan or a mortgage.
Can I add, some of you may recall that long ago, the district replaced most of your elementary and junior high schools, and they passed a big bond for that, and that's been paid off for quite some time, I'm sure.
Thank you. VCBO, any concluding remarks or thoughts? We've gone through most of the questions or similar questions. Anything you want to leave with us? Alex?
Yeah, I would just reiterate that we're all excited. We've all said that we're honorary Panthers. Just being able to meet with your students, the faculty, the staff, everybody has that mentality of once a Panther, always a Panther. And I think we feel the same way. We're happy to be engaged with the West High community, and we're excited to see where this process leads.
Jared, anything to add? Okay, fair enough. Well, we thank you. We will have additional meetings. Please spread the word for folks. Please get on and fill out surveys. And here we go. All right, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for coming. We're very grateful for you for coming and keep giving us your feedback. We're really grateful.
And bring 5 friends with you the next time. Bring some more.